we get a recording for everyone who's not able to be here. If you're joining us now, thank you. We're just kind of getting rolling. We're a few minutes in, but we just wanted to hit record. I think at the same point, I think that if we go back for a half second, in addition, I think they were really accustomed to interpersonal interaction. I think they regularly attended our mandatory activities, thinking like assemblies, rallies, things like that. And I think for the most part, and we'll talk about why this is and what this means, but I think most students viewed extroversion as kind of a positive when it comes to school spirit. There's this old adage that the louder people cheer, the more school spirit they must have. That the louder someone is, the more spirited, the more they care about their school. But I think the students who are turning to us are very, very different. I think first and foremost, I think that students are uncomfortable with large groups, and it makes entire sense why. I think our students are uncomfortable with cheering and yelling. I think our students feel a lack of connection to other students. And I think that's totally understandable. I think that students are feeling more introverted and anxious. I think that our students really aren't used to attending activities because a lot of our participation and engagement struggled this year. And it makes total sense. And then finally, I think that students right now have found a lot of comfortability on screens. I have a question for everyone, if you can help me out in the chat. How many of you have started back on in-person learning and noticed a difference in the way your students act or behave? Have anyone just like on a yes or no basis, have you noticed that? Yeah, 100%. It's massive. It's a massive difference. The way they interact, the way they communicate or lack thereof, even down to their facial expressions of what like non-verbally they'll actually respond to has fundamentally changed. I see someone in there, Wayne Shapiro, saying, hey, they're quiet. I agree. Interacting with adults is hard. Learning to people again is hard. Like I know I've struggled with that. I've struggled with learning how to just like have small group conversations again. My wife and I went out to a restaurant and bar near a handful of weeks back. And we were planning on just going and grabbing a meal. And we literally showed up. And within a matter of a few moments, I felt so uncomfortable that we were like, you know what, let's just go home. Not that we were upset at anything, but it was just felt overwhelming. And I think a lot of our students feel overwhelming. And apologies, I'm going to let a few more people in the room, but I think a lot of us just feel incredibly overwhelmed right now. Our students are no exception to that whatsoever. And so as part of today, I want to be able to collaborate and learn together. We have almost 200 people, multiple countries, states all across the country. We have our friends in Canada who are joining us as well, which I love. And I think it would be an absolute waste and a shame if we went through this entire session together today, the next hour of our time together. I know we're a little less than that now. And we didn't take the chance to actually meet and engage with one another and work together and plan. And so we're going to do 2 different breakout sessions today. Now, I fully am aware of how awkward breakouts are. I know you all are as well. But I'm going to make them slightly larger breakouts, 7, 8 people. So we have the opportunity to really talk and connect. And what I want you to have a conversation about for this first one is actually really simple. So we're going to kind of bookend this throughout this webinar. Number one, I just want you to share your name and your school, where you're coming from. But second, I want you to share a simple answer to what have you noticed? What have you noticed, whether it's the students, if you're still virtual or online, or if you're going back in person, what have you noticed that's different about your students when it comes to their levels of participation, when it comes to how they are emotionally or psychologically, or when it comes to how they're engaging or maybe not engaging with you? I just want to have an open conversation about that. So again, it'll be about a 5-minute breakout. Simply, you'll go in, I will automatically send you into those breakout rooms. And again, for that 5-minute session, all you're going to go ahead and do is share your name, share where you're from. And I genuinely want to know, what have you noticed about the students who are returning to you? Because I think those answers, coming back, sharing, talking about that, realizing we're all on a similar playing field, will be paramount to us actually creating activities that impact those students in the future. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share right now. I'm going to go ahead and open up breakout rooms. And I see some people privately messaging like, hey, are you recording this in case I need to view it later? Yes, I started the recording a tiny bit after I did an intro, but that's okay. I will totally make sure and send this out. That way you have access to it. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open up those breakout rooms right now. We have, like I said, about 170 people in here right now. And so give me a second. I have to click to make sure we have about 7 or 8 people. There we go in every single one. You'll be in here for about 5 minutes. Again, name, where you're from, and genuinely, I want to know, what have you noticed about the students who are returning to you? Those rooms are opening in 3, 2, 1. I'll see you in about 5 to 6 minutes. Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. Everyone is flooding back into the room. All 160 of us. Awesome. Hey, welcome back, everyone, through the recording back on. I'm genuinely curious, really quick. In the chat, it's probably going to be the easiest way for us to talk in mass about this, considering how many people we have on. I'm very curious, what have you noticed about your students in terms of their participation, in terms of their attitude? Like, throw it into the chat, anything, everything that you have noticed or seen. I'm genuinely curious. Lack of connection, lack of connectedness, overall focus on communication. The general student body is incredibly disconnected. They're timid, muted, over it, shy, needing acceptance, apathy, lack of motivation. Students are passive. They're very okay with silence, disengaged, just quiet. Tale of two teens, one that engaged and the others that are isolated. I feel that in the realest way. Very hard to create facial expressions. Yeah, they want to engage. They don't want to stand out. Too busy at home taking care of their families. Alyssa, I entirely agree. Our kids are hesitant, happy to be back. Communication by text and type, but not voice. Yeah, there's a lot. Our students have been through a lot. And I think it's really valuable and really important that we have these kind of conversations with our leaders, because I saw one of the comments in here and I think it's incredibly true. And you can tell me in the chat if you agree or disagree, but I feel like where our students want to get back to and what our current students, where they are and what they need, feel very different. And I'll say it one more time. I think that where our student leaders currently are and where they want to bring back, and I think where our normal average high school, middle school student is, and what they need, I think those are on opposite ends of a spectrum. And so it's like, how do we bring school spirit back on one hand of things while also taking care of the needs of our students? And it's a really hard thing to balance. And so one thing, if you've ever heard me present before, I always want you to steal everything from me. And I'm always open about that. Please take all of the things. Take all of this. I will literally send you all of this stuff when we're done. And I've come up just with quickly two ways to have this conversation with your leaders before now and even the end of this week to go ahead and start these conversations. And the first, I'm going to go ahead and throw some slides up on the screen, is I call it our magic wand conversation. I love this conversation, by the way. I've had this conversation with a number of student leadership groups in the past few weeks, and they've been some of the most thoughtful, incredible conversations I've had. It simply sounds like this. If tonight a magic wand was waved over the world and COVID suddenly ended entirely, I mean, no risk of getting infected. Everyone is healthy. Everyone is good. The world is fine, and there is zero risk of COVID coming back. And again, starting tomorrow, because COVID is gone, all of our students can return to school. Masks are a thing of the past. Genuine question. How many of our activities would our students, our traditional activities, how many of those would our students actually feel comfortable participating in? What would our students actually feel emotionally comfortable with, assuming that the physical aspect of it, the logistical, the COVID-related aspect of it were gone? One thing I would encourage you to do, if you've had prom, you might maybe have noticed this. I'm a massive nerd when it comes to student activities, so I've done a ton of searching on this. And one thing I found really interesting over the past month, in states where schools are able to do more of a traditional prom right now, what I've heard in talking to a lot of advisors, and you can look at pictures on Instagram and look at schools' Instagram pages and what they're doing, is that not as many students are actively dancing as they used to. They're just not. And that tells me a lot about where students are at. If students are able to bring back prom, if they're able to bring back all of these things and they're still not comfortable with the act of dancing or being around each other, that tells me a lot about their emotional state, about where they are and how they're feeling and what they're doing. And so with all, I see Laura drums. Laura, I like seeing you on here. Laura, can you unmute? Laura is, they're one of our Envolve schools. They've done trainings with us before. Laura, when did you have prom?
We actually had it the March 24th or like right around there. So super early. Hello, yep. I'm from the South.
Yeah, coming to you from Georgia. Okay, so Laura, I'm curious, like what was the feeling of it like?
So I talked with my student body president afterwards and I said, you know, what, give me your input. And she said, it was the weirdest thing I've ever been to because we were all there and the adults weren't telling us not to dance with each other, but we just didn't know. And it was she said it was like you started to dance, but you were like, can I get that close to that person? Am I making that person uncomfortable? And it was like they had forgotten how to interact. So we've already started talking about what does that mean for our dances moving forward, and how do we create experiences that allow for dancing, but also other safer opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
And again, this also goes under the understanding that like every school, every state's doing things differently right now. Georgia is doing prom. California, a lot of schools aren't touching it. It really depends on where you're at. I'll show you another stat. I'm a big fan of statistics. 48%, that's the California number. I don't know if anyone knows that number and why that's significant. Of high school students in California, only 48% have elected to go back to school in person. 48%. That is not a school issue. That is a student issue. Only 48% have decided to go back. Look at Meg Walsh, Leland High. Meg, it's good to see you pop on there as well. Do you want to unmute? Do you want to talk to us about like what that looks like, that 10% even?
Yeah, it's challenging to try to feel excited each day. You have a lot of classes with only one student in it with the teacher, which is also an awkward situation just in itself. And it's declined each week. So, you start off and everyone's excited, and then they look around and their friend's not there. So then that week they don't come, the next week they don't come back. And then you're not sitting with anyone at lunch. So then the next week you don't come back. And so it's just slowly declining, and we still have 3 weeks left. Who knows what we'll be at the last week of school. So it's hard to keep up the energy and excitement when people don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I see some schools in the chat saying like, we're at 80%, we're at 25%, and it's hard. It's hard. I see Naperville, we did Singo, it's super fun. We only had 25% of normal attendance. We're doing a murder mystery for prom. No dancing's allowed. But we're trying our best. And I think that's a big part of it. Like what students are emotionally comfortable with and where we were are fundamentally off. And so I think we have to have that conversation with our leaders, because they're in theory the ones who are going to be really putting this into use. And this conversation, the magic wand conversation, is incredible. There's actually a secondary conversation I actually like even more. We call it activities for blank. Again, please steal all of these. Activities for blank, you can literally make this person whoever you want to be. Activities for Kyle, activities for Cheryl, activities for whomever. I see Kevin Bacon somehow in the chat. I don't know how that appeared in the chat, but I'm fine with it. So this will be activities for Kevin Bacon. This is just how we're dealing with today. And basically what you want to go ahead and do is you want to go ahead and figure out who that person is. Your student leaders are going to help you fill in the blanks. This is going to be kind of an average representation of your school. Now, I know that there are different groups of students at your school, and one thing that you can always do is split students into smaller groups and assign different kind of mock students, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. But the idea is really simple. As of right now, if we were to create the kind of skeptical 16-year-old, the average high school student, the anxious freshman at your school, the anxious 7th grader at your school, I genuinely want to know which of our activities that student, Kevin Bacon, would feel comfortable with. What are current activities would that student actually feel comfortable doing? And I think what your leaders will quickly find is the answer is not many, not nearly as many as we possibly would want. And so if we can recognize step one, that there are certain things that students are comfortable with, but yet a lot of others that they're not comfortable with. And if the best student activities, the best activities that have ever been created are intended to meet students exactly where they are, then I think we have to understand who we're serving and what they need. If the best activities always meet students exactly where they are, and where our students are is not a confident or comfortable place, our activities have to reflect that. Our activities have to be low risk, simple in nature. And if those are our students, then we have to bounce straight to the second step of this, which is we have to revitalize our approach. If our students have changed, so must our approach to engaging them. It has to fundamentally switch up. And give me just a second. I'm going to let a few more people in. We have some people joining a little late. But I think we need to change our approach pretty drastically. And I've been thinking a lot about how to go about this. This has kind of been like on my mind nonstop for the last probably 2 months. And I've been chatting with different advisors and different schools and everything like that, trying to kind of figure out where people are at. And there's, in my mind, a good analogy that I'd like to use, because I had heard it been used by a lot of advisors. It kind of sounds like this. I've heard of a lot of advisors talking about school spirit as a rubber band. The idea, really, really simple, is that school spirit in and of itself is a simple rubber band, that this pandemic has stretched it, that the pandemic has stressed our students, that all of this has put a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of discomfort on our kids and on their high school or middle school experience. But the moment all of this eases up and as light starts to appear at the end of the tunnel and as vaccines are distributed, so on and so forth, the rubber band kind of snaps back into place and things go back to normal. I actually think this is what our students believe school spirit is going to look like. That as the pandemic lessens, that school spirit will return to normal. But I kind of tend to look at school spirit a little bit differently. I don't look at school spirit as a rubber band. I tend to look at school spirit kind of as a savings account. And hear me out what I mean by this. I've always believed, and any school in here that's worked with me before knows this simple fact. I firmly believe that the currency of student engagement and student activities is trust. It's the number one thing. Trust is the number one factor that determines whether or not a student will attend an event, whether or not they'll show up, whether or not they'll participate, whether they'll buy a ticket, whether they'll sit in the stands. If students trust that their friends are going in, trust the community they're involved in, they will participate. And so our goal always involved whenever we do a training is figuring out how schools can gain more trust with students. But think about this for a moment. I think that the currency of student engagement is trust. And so what if we looked at our program, our school spirit, our activities programs for just a moment in kind of the eyes and viewpoint of this savings account? Like any savings account, I think you can make withdrawals and you can make deposits. I think we withdraw from that school spirit kind of savings account pretty often though. I think through large events, through any anxiety-inducing activities, I think through spirit days, which ask for 8 hours often of consistent participation, through asking-oriented events where we're promoting and promoting and promoting and promoting and asking and asking. I think through returning to school for a lot of students can feel stressful, through turning on cameras if we're learning virtually, even down to unmuting in a virtual class. I think the amount that we ask, the amount that we're requiring, I think that over time, it puts a stress on students. I think the more we withdraw from that account, I think the lower our balance ultimately gets. On the other side, though, I think this next school year, and especially even this spring, I think we can start making deposits into that account. And I wonder genuinely, if we look at our school spirit right now, if we look at our levels of student engagement right now, if we're running on a little bit of debt, if our students are just fed up, if our students are just kind of done right now, if we're running not in the green, not even in the black, we're just running in the red. I genuinely want to know, and I hope this isn't a negative question to ask, but is that fair to say? How many of you would say, go ahead and put green, black, or red in the chat if you would for me? I'm genuinely curious where you feel your students are right now in terms of kind of their school spirit savings account. Look at this red, 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 everything red. Can we have a separate conversation real quick, which I think is equally important? I think our staff members are in the red in probably an even bigger way than our students. Here's why. Like, think about this from an outside perspective and how ridiculous this sounds when you phrase it this way. Think about it like this. You were asked to entirely change your job. You did. Then they said, hey, do you remember your old job? You're going to go back to that, but you're going to do your old job and your new job, especially if you're teaching concurrently right now. You're going to do both of those simultaneously, somehow flawlessly. Imagine how much that pulls out of our school spirit savings account. Our students see that, they feel that. Yeah, while answering a million emails a day. Someone said April bankrupted us, all while the press hates us. You're not wrong. I think we feel below on E right now. And so one really important question I want to ask before we even talk about traditions, because we'll get there, is how do we start making deposits? How do we start putting deposits back into our students, deposit back into our school spirit savings account, deposits back into our teachers, deposits back into our staff? Like, what do those actually look like? And there's quite a few ways to do it. I think the first are what we call connection-oriented activities. Connection-oriented activities are simple activities that sole focus is to pair one student with one student. I'm going to pick on Sandy Ginger for a minute because I see her on the call and she showed up late, which I'm very upset about. It was like 15 minutes late, which is uncalled for. Sandy, first time I ever spoke at your event, it was a middle school conference, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. You did a simple event. I know you guys have done it before, where you would take, for example, 800 attendees, you'd split 400, 400, you'd give them matching numbers and they would find their match. Is that, do I have that right? You can unmute, let me know if I have that correct.
Yep.
Cool.
Your
And think about, I'm sorry?
Your soulmate.
Yes, their soulmate. Imagine if we took that, broadened it out and just called it a school soulmate on our first week of school. You know, our school colors, let's say, are green and gold. Half gets green 1 through 400. The other half gold 1 through 400. Their goal by the end of the week is simply to find their match, just so they know someone on campus. Best part about that, it meets students exactly where they are in terms of finding students online. Your students are the greatest generation of stalkers the world has ever known. So we know they'll get the job done and they'll form connection. More than that, we can create what are called anchored activities. Anchored activities are so incredibly, if you ever heard me speak in the last couple of years, I've been on these nonstop. Anchored activities are really simple. It's the general idea that every activity we create, its sole purpose is to spread an intentional message. Every school, every single school that has done our Envolve trainings this year, they know all about anchored activities. And I see from Willow Creek, is it doable with 2,600 students? Absolutely. I've seen schools of that size do it and bigger. But imagine if every single one of our activities, the sole focus was to communicate something. If we took inventory of what our students need and just communicated that on a daily basis. If we noticed that students really need support and we simply took mirrors and markers and wrote messages on those mirrors around campus and walkways or chalk on the ground or whatever it is students need just to know they're accepted. Really simple, really easy. We can create moments of giving where we're not asking anything, where we're just giving to students. We can go ahead and create message forward activities where the sole goal again is just to spread a message. We can value invitation over solicitation. We can go ahead and do what we call targeted or personalized.
I'd like to come yesterday. I came in the morning, remember?
I'm gonna go ahead and mute whoever that is. There we go. I want to go ahead and create, again, targeted or personalized activities. And then finally, I want to have really school-focused acts of service where we're actually showcasing, serving, telling a story, helping someone in our community that our students can really latch on to. I wonder if we approached our activities from that standpoint instead of the rubber band idea. I wonder if we just decided to give, if we just decided to take small intentional moments. One thing that's a core part of everything we do when a school gets trained and Envolve. When we do leadership trainings in the summer and in the fall, every one of our schools until the end of the school year, from the start of the school year to the end, receives what we call weekly activity challenges. Those are small intentional challenges schools literally do every single week. They do them almost religiously, and it's kind of amazing to either engage or encourage a different part of their school. That's it. That way, student leaders are getting wins every week, but more than that, we're gaining trust. We're literally part of the foundation of everything we do is that once per week, we're going to go ahead and make a deposit into that school spirit savings account every single week. I wonder if one thing when we talk about tradition, I wonder if your schools had a tradition of doing that in the past. I think the best leadership programs in the country view activities as part of a larger ongoing process. If we take this idea of like events versus activities, because you'll find that events are largely extroverted, whereas activities are simple and small and easy and don't require a lot of planning or additional effort. And then we take this idea of a school spirit savings account. I think it's actually quite simple. I think the vast majority of our activities need to start that are activities that are simple deposits right there in the corner. I think slowly but surely we can work our way up. Oh, activity. Yeah, I saw that, Jonna. That's awful. It's all right. It happens. But I think over time, it moves upward. They go upward and upward. And Meg, I saw your message. You have actual events that fit these on your site. Absolutely. And I can totally show you afterwards what they look like. If anyone's interested in seeing how that all breaks down, I will literally pull up our database at the end of this and walk you through everything. I just want to make sure get you out of here on time. 100% down with that. And so if that's how we're going to look at approaching student leadership of like, hey, we want to make sure and make deposits. We have to recognize and understand that our school traditions have to change. Here's a quick history lesson. And I see what are activities that are also deposits. I can give you a million of them. For example, we'll talk some virtual deposits and then we'll talk more in-person deposits. Virtual deposits are really simple. We went ahead earlier this year. We did something called Secret Spotlight, was one of our activities. Weekly challenges early in the school year. Student leadership, simply enough, would go ahead and privately message 5 students. That's it, just 5. They would privately message 5 students and say, hey, we're going to spotlight you. But in order for that to happen, you need to spotlight someone else. You don't have to do it on your own page. You just have to send us back someone on campus who's working hard and what you love about their effort. They simply safely send back 1 student. We then post that highlight as well, spotlight, and then we message the person they spotlight. We message them and say, hey, someone spotlighted you. Pay it forward. Who'd you like to spotlight? What are they doing? And what's incredible about their effort? And then so on and so forth, over and over and over. We did something this year. A lot of our schools did something called the mascot mobile. For students who are learning virtually at home, that's a school in your school's colors that goes around once per week to a random student's house, literally the mascot, to a random student's house once per week, doing a literal random surprise act of socially distant kindness. As an added bonus, we record the event that we can throw it on our Instagram of where will the mascot strike next. Simple. There was no asking. We did lots of, Amy, Benson, and Georgia, they did so many. They have the Freddie Mobile. They're one of our schools. They did a ton of them this year. They're incredible. We even did simple deposits like, hey, we recognize that students are on screens nonstop and they love background noise. And so what if we literally went ahead and had our student leaders during finals week when students are studying, create live streams of adorable pets with soft music in the background for studying? Wouldn't that make students feel just a little bit more connected? Or if we did something as simple as contact a local Starbucks or coffee shop in our area and have them create a custom drink in your school's colors, but that's only to get them there. Because the real goal is every time they order that drink in your school's colors, we're loading up that Starbucks, that coffee shop with 100 kind handwritten notes. That way with their receipt, they're literally getting a kind note saying, hey, we miss you, we appreciate you, we can't wait to see you again. Petra and the crew there did that and it was incredible. The drink notes are the best. Yeah, a lot of our schools are on here. Simple deposits like that are so valuable and so intentional. And so we only have about 12 minutes left. So I'm going to move quickly because I know you guys have dinner to eat and all of those things. And again, if any of you are interested, I'm going to stay on after and go through more of this and more examples, and we'll keep it very impromptu. Like I said, we were actually supposed to have a secondary breakout, but we're not going to have time for it. And that's okay. I truly hope above anything that this is proving helpful so far. I try to be an open book with all of this. So seriously, even though our time will end in about 12 minutes, you're more than welcome to stay on because we're going to cover a ton of other stuff. And I'm going to give as many examples and ideas as I possibly can. So let's go straight on to reimagining our school traditions. I think if we kind of look at history, there are only 2 points in time where school spirit's been reimagined. The first is when a school opens. A school gets to decide on their traditions when they open for the first time. If you're a new school, you know this. If you're an older school, though, your traditions have existed likely a long time before you even took the job at that school. And you've tried your best to figure your way out of those traditions, but because of outside pressure, parents wanting it to happen, and students believing, knowing, or thinking that it has to happen, you've maintained it. And so how in the world do we deal with these traditions? I think that it's going to take some work to kind of get through these and figure things out. But I think there's only, again, been those 2 moments when these kind of things can change. I think the first is when a school opens, and I think the second's actually right now. Think about this, because of the stats we showed earlier, 100% of middle school students, 3/4 of high school students, there's no expectation from students other than potentially your seniors. Parent expectation, sure, but not necessarily from students. I think tradition should be a term we use to describe what works well, not used as an excuse for something we can't get rid of. I wish I could put that on a billboard. Like, I wish I could put this everywhere for every school to see. That word has become a terrible word in the past few years. I think tradition in terms of activities is what works well. I don't think tradition is what we do because we do it. I think they're entirely different ideas. And so what do we do with our traditions? I think there's 3 kind of components of it. I think it's what do we stop? I think it's what we continue. And I think it's what we create. And so let's start most importantly with what in the world we're going to stop. And I kind of have 5 really telltale signs if you're curious, if you need to rip the Band-Aid off of a tradition. 5 telltale signs that you just need to get rid of it. And I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Number 5, we'll go in reverse order. I think there are activities that value volume over community. Let me go ahead and explain what that means. Got into an argument with a school years ago. Or actually, I'll tell you a different story. I was doing an event years ago with a school on the East Coast. They went ahead and told me, that they, for their back to school assembly, were going to do something known as a glass lick competition. If you're unfamiliar with what that term means, it's an old activity term that means they were going to put a large piece of plexiglass in the middle of the gym. They would put chocolate syrup on either side of it, get 2 socially awkward, their words, not mine, students from the bleachers, and see who can lick off the chocolate syrup fastest. Everyone would cheer, everyone would clap, everyone would laugh. That would be the activity. The idea behind that activity is actually really simple. The louder people cheer, the more school spirit they have. Volume is the biggest mask of student spirit and school culture I've ever seen. Think about how many traditional activities we fall back on because students want to do it, that literally bring a few students out of the gym floor, embarrass them for whatever reason, hope that everyone cheers and claps, make it as ridiculous as we possibly can so that students make noise. And here's the thing. I see someone saying like, that's so inappropriate. It's kind of gross. I'll be entirely honest with you. I keep a running list of what I consider to be like the top 10, 20 worst and best activities that still exist. That activity is nowhere near the worst. We do this activity. Michelle Munson, are you on the call right now?
I am.
Michelle, do you remember, I've trained Michelle's students for years. Do you remember a few years ago when we did the world's worst activity at your training?
Yes, I do.
We did an activity with her and about 4 high schools in our area called the world's worst activity. We challenged students. We gave them 10 minutes to create the most embarrassing, over the top, uncalled for activity that they think a school would approve of. And Michelle, do you want to tell them what happened? Because I know you remember.
I don't know that I remember the activity because I think I blocked
Not the
it.
activity, but again, the overarching, what we noticed about them.
Oh, they were so excited. They wanted to do it. It was all about, yes, this will be so good and it'll be so fun and let's do it. And Scott and I and the advisors looked at each other like, where are we right now?
It quickly changed from this is the worst activity of all time to can we do it?
How fast can we do this? What do we need to do? This is going to be so good.
It changed almost instantly. And the second thing we recognized that some of the advisors in the back, we were literally almost in tears. And it was like half sadness, half laughter. Is that some of the activities that they created were actually activities we had seen or heard about before. The worst thing they could possibly come up with were things schools had actually done. So activities that value volume over community, obviously not positive. Activities driven by parents and not students are typically a pretty rough sign of a bad tradition. If you are in a small town in an older school, you know this to be true. Activities that bring more complaints and excitement from students and staff alike, activities that are detrimental to school spirit overall, and activities that highlight the few at the expense of the many. I'm not sure if Josh Roll is on here from Marysville Pilchuck. Josh, are you on here by chance? Not sure if he's on. I know he signed up. He might be watching the recording. They used to do for their homecoming. They would do a really, really intense kind of coronation. I might be butchering the explanation of it, but they would do a really intense kind of homecoming court that basically took all of the students on campus, put them in the gym, and it was so much about these students. At the average student, I feel like that kind of withdrew from their Spirit savings account. It didn't make any deposits. And so I think while we can get rid of a lot, and my, by the way, advice for this year is actually pretty cut and dry. I think we just need to rip the Band-Aid. I think there are definitely things we can keep if we find that our students love them and they have positive messages that are anchored to them. But the third question is, what do we actually create? And so if there are signs of a bad tradition, there have to be signs of a good tradition. And so number 5 is I think that there are activities that are anchored in community and inclusion. Monroe High School in Washington does an incredible homecoming. So many schools that have changed homecoming from being about royalty to being all about service. And yeah, completely agree with Nadia. I've worked with her students before. She's luckily at a little bit of a newer school, but the amount of work, Nadia, I remember you having to put into that school to establish traditions that matter. And to actually create, like, I know that your homecoming is a lot different than most schools because of what you do. Do you want to speak to that for a few minutes?
Well, we actually, when we were opening, we read an article about Monroe High School and their service-oriented homecoming. So ours is Homecoming Heroes, and we're still developing it because we didn't have homecoming our first year. And it's basically kids get nominated for certain characteristics. They take on a service project. We have a community dinner where they're there and we're trying to invite the community in. And the first year we collected toiletries. The second year we did food. And so we're still sort of developing it, but there's like this combination of service points for their service project and points for a voting component. And yeah, that's what we're working on for Homecoming Heroes.
Totally different approach. And they do such a phenomenal job of it. Such an amazingly good job because it changes the entire dynamic of what that week is for. I ask students regularly what the actual point of homecoming is. And for the record, most of them, like 95% of them, have no idea that it's intended for alumni, because it's not anymore. It's fundamentally not. And so if the activity doesn't meet the purpose it was created for, it's time to change the activity. I think that works pretty simply. If the activity we've created and the purpose it was designed for no longer mesh, I think it's time to move on or to change it. And so activities, again, that are driven by students, not by parents, activities that involve staff and students, not just putting staffs on a platform to have them do one dance and hope that students cheer, but to actually integrate them into what they do. Activities that require minimal advertisement, if any. Our students are leaders. They are not a PR agency. They are leaders. They are supposed to be leading. They are not supposed to be purely advertising. And oftentimes we just find ourselves advertising and promoting everything. And then finally, activities that highlight many at the expense of nobody. I think those are a huge change. I don't think more than that. I don't think tradition should be limited to this idea of large scale events. I think that's a misconception. I think tradition is anything a school does that's regular, consistent, repetitive. There's a second conversation I've been having with our student leaders. It's actually going to be an integral part of a lot of our trainings coming up this summer and fall. And it's called the New School Brainstorm. Again, traditions are not, I do not believe all traditions are event-based. I think that those just tend to stick around the longest. Tradition is anything we do that's on a consistent basis, that's repetitive, that we constantly do. And so question, and this is again a brainstorm we're even going to do in our trainings. If you were opening a brand new school, brand new for the first time, what would make Mondays different? What is something your new school, this school coming in next school year, would do every single Monday on repeat that makes students feel loved and appreciated, that deposits in? What if Mondays, literally every single Monday, was when we had our teachers stand out by the front door and welcome students? Those are Mondays, every Monday, because that's who we are. Every single Monday, our student leaders stand at doors. Every single Monday, teachers stand at doors. Every single Monday, students give something out at lunch. Every single Monday, that's who we are. That's what we do. How amazing would that be? What about Fridays? What if every single Friday we play music as students arrive to campus to let them know that it's a good day? It's a good day to be a part of your school. It's a good day to be a part of something special. What about what we call Second Monday? Psychologically speaking, one of the worst days of the school year for students is the second Monday of the school year. Okay, we often spend a lot of time with orientation, syllabus, all that kind of stuff on the first week. There's not a lot of work that happens, but that second Monday, and you know this from being a student, you sit in that class and you know, like, oh my gosh, it's game time now. What will we do to make that day special? What about our freshman community welcome? What if every single freshman, the first day they come to your school, when they sit on their desk, there's a note on their desk? Because one of the traditions for your outgoing seniors is to write a note to every single freshman, encouraging them to get involved in different things on campus. What makes our passing period special? What if every single passing period we played music, calming music to get students from one place to the next? What about our bell schedules? Bell schedules are nothing more. Bells, like the sound of a bell over a loudspeaker, is nothing more than a ringtone on a phone. You can change it to whatever you want, whenever you want. What if we changed it regularly? Some schools have even gotten rid of bells. What about our first game of the year? What about, what do we do to make students feel welcomed, loved, appreciated on a consistent basis? We only have 2 and it sounds like a doorbell. Oftentimes, Melon, it's good to see you on here. I was giving you a hard time for possibly not being able to make it. Oftentimes it simply becomes, if we have the ability to announce through, is just having someone who works in the office staff help us out one day a week or one day a month with unique sounds, if they're willing to help us with that. And if we've made enough deposits in their school spirit account as well. And so one thing I love doing, and sadly we don't have time for it, would be to kind of talk about this, to have this conversation of like, what would it look like? But again, I want to make sure I get you out of here on time. So if I have literally a minute and a half of your time left, I'd love to wrap things up. And then I'm going to stay on here and go through as many extra things as I possibly can, because that last segment luckily is our shortest. And that's how do we revive student engagement? I think that student engagement, reviving all of that, making deposits, changing up our tradition, doing all this for the new year, it's going to require one thing in a very, very big way. And that's that we have to train our student leaders in a very intentional manner. Like, it's going to need to be a comprehensive effort that's filled with support and collaboration and follow-up. I don't think this year that training student leaders can be this one-day experience where students come in, learn what we do and how to do it, and move on with their year. I don't think it's that simple. I think that students are going to need follow-up. I think students are going to need collaboration. I think students are going to need to understand the kind of school they're a part of and what they want that school to look like. And then we can get to the work. And so I'll let you know full and well right now how we do, how we structure our trainings, not in what's included. Like I said, I'm not going to take that up in part of your time. If you want to stay on and hear more about our trainings and all of that, I'm more than happy to show you examples and go through all of that. But I wanted, when we announced this and we had 200 people on here tonight, my goal was really, really simple. And that's just to help in any way I can. And so again, if at the end of this, you're like, hey, you know what, I want to stick by and hear a little bit more about some of their trainings because I've been interested, stick on, and I'll throw some examples out there and different things. And if not, that's fine too. I'm just happy you were here. But here's how we tend to kind of look at things. I think it kind of exists in a number of levels. I think that to build really strong leaders this year, I think we need to have incredible team building. I think there has to be an actual foundation for who we are as leaders and who we are as a leadership program. I think we have to have a really intentional leadership training. I think we have to have some really important goal setting and discussion. I think we have to have phenomenal resources to fall back on. And then finally, I think we have to have constant collaboration and growth. I think we need all of that. Thankfully, that's what we build into literally everything we do. And so I want to pause to say this because we're 2 minutes over on time. If you feel the need to jump off right now, if you have dinner, if you have things to do, I just want to pause and say I appreciate you bouncing on here this evening. I apologize for the slight issues earlier. Jeff Culver, I just noticed you changed your background to a copy of our mural with random pictures of me. And I have so many questions later. But I appreciate all of you jumping on. Again, I'm going to stay on here and go over how this relates to our trainings. I know we have so many schools who are booking them and curious about them. And then I'm even going to go ahead and pull up our activity hub and show you guys a ton of examples and things like that. So you're welcome to hop off, but if you want to stay, we're going to keep rolling. This kind of framework is a huge integral part of what we do. So a good example, a way of looking at that, when we do our trainings, it starts off with a live 3-hour training. Right now, we're following the lead of amazing organizations like CATA and others. We want to keep students safe. And so we are doing trainings virtually. And so it starts out with a 3-hour training. And I know we have a lot, I'm seeing in the chat, we have a ton of Envolve schools who are here, who have done trainings this year. We've trained about 120 schools alone this year. And it's this goal of training student leaders, giving them a common language to talk about activities, but then more than that, using it to apply to this incredible year we're going into, having them brainstorm and create. But the cool thing is once that training's done, in my opinion, that's where the real fun starts. Because the moment that training's done, one thing we're building into this year is schools receive what we're calling our action planning toolkit. That is literal principal digital PDF. A digital PDF where literally follow-up questions, discussion, checklists, everything a school will need if they can meet in person or hybrid or virtually, whatever their guidelines are, to actually start these important conversations and goal plan for the year. More than that, though, they're going to go ahead and receive for that entire school year those weekly activity challenges, which I just love. I'll go ahead and I'll make a point of this. If you attended this, and I hope this is okay, I'm going to go ahead and send you a packet of a bunch of my favorite activities that we've done through some of those challenges over the years. I'll make one of those up tonight. That way you can kind of see how they work and you can just start putting these things into place because your students need those. And in addition to that, every school that's trained, and this is kind of my favorite, they receive 3 what we call special event credits. We literally had a special event last night on how to recognize seniors. We had one 2 weeks ago where we had schools ranging from Hawaii all the way to Georgia, where students were collaborating with different students from different schools all over the country. One thing I think has been amazing on this is that we have the opportunity to collaborate with others like we are right now, like we're doing literally in this moment. And so our school, once you're trained, you get 3 of these response credits to literally join these different events and literally have all of your, and it's not just for you as advisors, these are for your students. When you see one come through, we've held 10 of them this year. When you see one of them come through, to use one of your credits to register your students, sign on live with students around the country to either learn or collaborate and be together, which is incredible. And I see a bunch of questions in the chat, and I'll totally get to those. I see people asking, is the training for the middle school the same as the high school? The content we keep the same because it's both student engagement level, but at the same time, the method of which we kind of administer it and go through it does change, because obviously the high school stuff is more advanced than the middle school content, but both with the same purpose. We have some of our middle schools and high schools both on here right now. And finally, they get access, 1 calendar year of access to our online activity hub, which I'll show you guys here in just a second, is a literal database of activities that students can access at any given time, about 500 more traditional student activities. And so if it's okay with y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and minimize this screen share. I see we still have 113 people on here, which is wild. Is it okay? If anyone has questions, you can totally ask me right now. I'll gladly go ahead and open up and show you guys the database and how all of it works. I'd be more than happy to. And also, while I have you all on, since we still have over 100 of you here, I do have a question to ask because I was thinking about it and I was genuinely unsure. I've been getting a couple requests from advisors around the country of like, hey, since we have so many people joining these webinars, would you be willing to do a webinar where it's literally just an idea share for advisors around the country, where like, there's no cost or anything like that, but any advisor can join and we can just get into segmented breakout rooms and just literally figure things out and what we're going to do and how we're going to plan. I see tons of yeses. Done. Cool. I'll announce it next week then. Cool. We'll do that. I have no issue with that at all. But I'm more than happy to go ahead and show you how the activity hub works. So give me a second. I'm going to go say less. I appreciate that. I'll show you how the activity hub works. I'll do a screen share right now so you can see everything. Let's go ahead and throw this up here. Apologies if you hear the squeaking in the background. That is Dash, our little puppy. He is a monster. So this is our website. So once a school is trained, I'm obviously in our master account right now. So you see all like the WordPress stuff to edit the website. But, oh, and I'm going to bounce back to questions here in just a second, Sarah. I promise I'm not ignoring you. Laura just private messaged me. We need to see Dash. Autumn, do you want to go get Dash? Okay. Autumn is going to get Dash for us because he's outside. You've all been warned. But I would personally like, don't worry, Dash is on his way. He's a monster. By the way, if anyone can correctly, we should totally do this. I just realized this and we're doing this. We don't know what kind of dog it is. We have no idea. So if anyone can guess correctly, we're getting a DNA test done. I will gladly send you stuff because we have no remote clue. And I'm seeing some questions, so I'll pop these up in just a second. If we divided middle school and high school, we do combine trainings. I often like separating those two groups. I like separating those two groups because they think they have different goals, different aims, and different things they'd like to do. New activities director next year could benefit from all the help. Jessica, first off, welcome. Second off, I will send you, please email me and reference this conversation, and I will send you a ton of starter stuff for you just to get started in this. I want to be able to help. So please, please, please. Do you get access to the hub before, during, or after the training? Typically it's after the training, but I have nothing against giving access prior to. I have no issue with that at all. I just typically don't have people ask. Oh, Dash. So Dash is going to help us go through, here you go, buddy. Go through the activity hub. So typically what happens is once a school signs in, you can go ahead and click in progress here in the top, and you'll notice all of these boxes. Now, one of these, which is this upper right-hand corner where it says book an individual session, that one will change. So that's where the action planning toolkit will live, but the other ones will stay the same. So you'll notice, for example, that if a school wants to access our upcoming events, they literally click it, it will take to them the upcoming events. This was the one that happened last night. This is the event we're literally in right now. And this is an event we're actually holding next week for our students, of like how we actually plan, executive board wise, your student leader, president, vice president, everything like that. And so our schools have 3 of these to use. And so they use them all the time, which is incredible. I'll show others real quick. So that is the upcoming events tab. If you're unsure of how many special event credits you have left, you can literally throw it right into this box. It says, how many response credits do we have left? All of our weekly challenges. If you need to sign more students up because we want as many students to have access to them as possible, you click it and it will literally pull up a form to fill out to get those. And then the third thing I'll show you, this is our online activity hub. So like I said, a database of about 500 more traditional student activities. And so students can literally work through these. And I see if you use all your response credits, can you buy more? Absolutely. We never want to exclude students from events. You'll always have the opportunity to get more if you'd like. But you notice here, this is our activity hub, and I'll give you an idea. You can search in here as well. So let's say, you know what? I know that our cafeteria staff is going to be back next year. So I want to help our cafeteria staff. So I'm literally going to put cafeteria into the search bar. It is literally going to load me activities that oddly enough deal. Yeah. Okay. That deal with our cafeteria. So I'll show you one right now. This one's called Caf Staff Kindness. You notice the process on this one. It literally shows step-by-step instructions. Begin this activity by discussing the importance of our cafeteria staff with your fellow leaders, how they make your school special, how can we better appreciate them each day. Cut 200 to 300 small pieces of paper in class, hand each student leader 10 to 20 pieces of paper. Those students then write compassionate notes on those pieces of paper. And instead of our student leaders handing those out to our cafeteria staff, okay, buddy, they go ahead and they hand them to our students who are waiting in line for their meals. That way, our students, as they're getting their meal, are able to pay and also give the cafeteria staff member a kind note. We've created two different moments of service, one for our student leaders, one for the average student, and we've created a moment that students will talk about in a positive way that puts a deposit into that school spirit savings account. So easy, so simple. But again, these are the types of activities that are typically in here. I'll go back. You'll notice that there are a ton of them for a bunch of different categories. I'll eliminate here cafeteria from this for a second. So you'll notice a bunch of these. Some of them are very, very simple. For example, this is a super hydrophobic coating. I've talked about this many times before. It's a substance you spray on the ground. It dries invisible until the moment water hits it. And so on rainy days, you can encourage students to keep their head up. Some of them have step-by-step instructions. Most of them do not. Most of them are very, very simple. For example, going ahead and hanging up inspiration for students doesn't require step-by-step instructions. That one's very simple. But you'll notice supplies listed to every single one. And again, there are about 500 more traditional activities in our activity hub. But that's the basic groundwork for how the hub works and how all of it works. But again, we want it to be a full comprehensive process. A full comprehensive process where students are getting trained in that 3-hour block, where students are receiving their action planning toolkit, where they're getting weekly activity challenges, where they're able to attend special live events and have resources if they need them. And I would be more than happy to answer questions. I see a lot of them. We still have 100 people on, so I'm more than happy to answer questions. I see the first one, I'm scrolling up because it highlighted through, will we be doing in-person trainings this year? I hope so. I really hope so. Like I'm crying on the inside and outside. My number one goal in all things is student safety. And so for right now, we are deciding to go ahead and keep things virtually for the moment. I know vaccine rollouts are happening and things are messy and things are changing. And so we eventually hopefully will get to that moment when and if, you know, that becomes something that we're able to do, I will go ahead and message that out immediately. We'll be more than happy to do that because I want schools to have that opportunity. In the meantime, it's important to know, because I saw a question about this in the chat, is that like, hey, what is it looking like right now? Right now, I know we have a ton of Envolve schools on the call. Right now, a lot of them, most of them I would actually say have actually already selected their dates for next school year for summer trainings, fall trainings. And so if you are curious at all, I'll make sure and send out info in that follow-up email that I'll send out. But if you are interested, the big piece of advice I would have is just to message back and set up a time to chat or look at the calendar or get more info, just because I have a feeling, given where things are at right now, that we'll be fairly booked in full very soon. And I see someone said little Rottweiler mix. I hope not. Not that I don't like Rottweilers, but my other dog is like yay big, so I don't want him to eat him. But I have no idea. He could be, for all I know. Yorkie Poo, possibly. New activities director would benefit from all the help. Yeah, we're here. And more than that, we'll make sure and go ahead and announce that collaboration event soon. We'll call it the lab. That's what I was thinking about calling it, just so we can all get in the lab and learn from each other and work. Any other questions any of you have? And it could be like more specific questions about activities or about the program or anything. Now is the time to throw it in the chat. I see, let's see. Caitlin, I've emailed but haven't received a response yet. Oh no. Caitlin, can you do me a favor? It's weird. The email inbox is empty right now with a few exceptions, but nothing on that front. Can you send me your email address, private message that to me, and I'm going to send you info from my personal email. That way, if it's getting blocked somehow, we can make sure and connect. I'm so sorry that's happening. Like I take a very I'm very, very personal and like trying to make sure we respond to all emails in 24 hours. And so that's upsetting. I'm so sorry. I see it in there right now. Cool. I'll make sure I get back to you tonight. But any other questions? Totally willing to answer. When you say student leaders, how many do you train at a time? We're a large high school. We've had trainings in the hundreds, and it's not been an issue in the slightest. None of that is an issue whatsoever. The biggest training set we did last year, I think, was in the 300 to 400 range. That sounds about right. Nothing in the slightest like that bugs us. Randy, I saw your message. I'll make sure and check. But if you send me over an email, I'll respond ASAP. If I just got to my school as an ASB AP, is there a way to find out if my school or old AP was a part of Envolve? I can find out for you. If you send me over what school you're a part of, I'm more than happy to find out right now. Because I know that's something that's really constant, but happy to find that out for you. But yeah, how many do you train at a time? As many as we need to. There's no limit there whatsoever. The more, the better. Do we do multi-school trainings? Absolutely. I don't know if Sarah, if you're still on here from San Mateo, I know we are chatting about that right now. I have an email, actually, Sarah, I need to get back to you tonight on, but we do those. Michelle Munson, who you heard talk a little bit earlier, we do a multi-school training with her every single year. Michelle, if I'm not mistaken, this is year 5, 6?
Yeah, I think it is. I think
5
it's
or
5
6.
or 6. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great because the students get to actually come together and not only learn during the training, but also learn from one another. So I think there's something really, really special about that. And Sarah's in here, 6 schools. Yeah, very excited. So yeah, more than willing to do that too. There's pros and cons to each, which I clearly lay out in our emails because I want you to be fully informed when you make that decision. And so I make sure and send all of that over. Any other questions I could help answer before we take off? Because I am an open book with all of this, whether it's activities or something your school is working with or struggling with or anything like that, or activities you want me to show you in the hub. Nothing? Cool. That's okay. Hey, you guys were on here for an hour and 20 minutes. Oh, and I see how many students at my school have been trained in Envolve. From San Leandro High School. We have not trained San Leandro High. I know that for a fact. I do know that area fairly well, oddly enough. And so San Leandro High, I know we've not trained anyone there, but I know that school well. But all that to say, I would be honored to work with anyone who's willing to work with us. We love activities and we love students. So yeah. On my way to a virtual 6th grade family night. I love it. Ron, you guys are all set up and scheduled for this fall. That makes me so happy. And then Ashley says, well, we have access to the presentation. Yes, in my Zoom craziness of trying to get them to change their settings back, I forgot to press record early on, but I went ahead and started recording like 5-6 minutes in. And so all of that will be recorded. Yeah. I'll make sure the link is active for about a week. That way you can access everything. And then Deanna, I see your info as well. I will go ahead, if you reach out to me, I will go ahead and if you respond to that message, I'm going to send out, I can send over pricing and all of that info. So absolutely, absolutely. Tracy, I see you. It's good to see you, by the way. I appreciate you too. Always fun to spend extra time with you. Katie Keys, so much love to you. Caleb, good to see you. Your guys' training very soon. Meg Walsh, did we get a new house? We're renting this one. We sold the old one because COVID, and then just because like you could sell houses for ridiculous amounts of money down here right now. And we wanted out of that house anyway. And so we got out of it, and this place has been absolutely lovely. Ashley says, what's the best way to reach out to you? Ashley, totally email. I'm really try to be, at least something clearly happened. But I clear out my email inbox every night. And so please shoot me an email, and then I'll usually figure out a time to chat or talk. I'll set up usually a time to talk over the phone and hear more about your school and how I can help. So all that to say, I appreciate every single one of you. Seriously, this is awesome. Like it's so rare at this point in the year, at this point in the pandemic, that 200 advisors come on for an hour and a half to talk activities. So I'll make sure and send out all of this info. I'll make sure to send out an invite to the lab, which is just going to be breakouts and learning and sharing. And so all that to say, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for being a part of this, for being on. Anyone who has additional questions, you're more than welcome to stay on. But everyone else, again, thank you. Take care of you, take care of everyone around you, and we'll see you all very soon. Thanks.